thank you so much, President Metsola, for joining us. I know that education and skills are a huge priority for the Commission, for the Parliament, and for you personally. So if you allow me just a few words, very brief, on the report that we are presenting today. So I asked my team to, because obviously this is a very topical subject. We are looking at this constantly across Europe and across the private sector, universities and others. And so I'd say two, or actually three things that are maybe new and granular insights on the report. The first finding, which I find interesting, is a shift from formal to informal learning practices. Almost 50% believe that practical experience is actually more important than formal learning. So I guess going to Harvard or Cambridge or the top universities in Europe is not as valued as before. And also that 60% believe AI and digital skills are crucial, yet they are not satisfied with their current knowledge of these. The second fact, which I also find incredibly interesting, is on corporate accountability. So 43% believe companies should be responsible for the upskilling and reskilling. Only 25% of the respondents, and this was all ages, by the way, from 18 to 80 or 70, 25% governments. And the last one is, I guess, more obvious and comes up a lot, and the need for continuous learning. But what I find interesting is that 81% of the respondents, 81% of the respondents say this, which means that the 25 and 30 and 40-year-olds also believe they need upskilling and reskilling. We typically think of 50 and 60-year-olds. No. 81% among all ages believe that this is important. So again, and by the way, there's another fact that 70% of all respondents of all ages believe that, I don't know what the number is, but a big majority that future jobs, 70% of future jobs don't exist today. I have to get ready for jobs that we don't know what they're going to be. So, you know, this of course is all theory and analysis, and so what about actions? And so, if I may, and of course you can, you know, give your views on any other items, but I think one of the key questions, which is being worked on, by the way, by the European University Alliance for Professional Upskilling, is how do we re-educate the educators? That would be one of the things top of my list, because this is the way we can have bigger impact.
So, Anna, thanks a lot. I think we can be on first-name basis. We've had many conversations like this, perhaps less in public, in this wonderful place, and what better one that was essentially a library to talk about education and training. And I'll start with one of the figures that you mentioned, which is an expectation by those who are employed that their employers will upskill them, will reskill them, will train them. And that, I think, is down to two factors. First of all, that they think that what they learned at school many decades ago, whether it is 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 decades ago, was not enough. Right. And two, that they do not feel that they have any possibility to find by themselves the possibility to reskill and train. Now, this could very well be, in a way, easy for us to say or less easy for us to say because we're in Brussels. We work here, we are offered quite a lot of opportunities by the institutions that we work in, but every day I also meet, and this was perhaps spurred on by the Draghi report that said that over 70% of European companies cite lack of skills as a barrier to improvement, and this could be also linked to the fact that if we look at future jobs, around 90% of them will have a digital element. And what do we mean by a digital element? And this could mean, first of all, whether you're a teacher, how you teach. I've just visited, I was telling you in the margins, a hospital, a children's hospital here, because today is the International Day of Play. And we are doing quite a big project teamed with product safety and safety of toys for kids. But most importantly, is how we can ensure that our children continue to play to learn. And if that means that we need to re-educate our teachers in order to teach differently, then perhaps that number of people who expect their employers to solve that shortage will decrease. And I think we should work together on that, because these numbers are otherwise too large for us to be able to, in a very, very fast pace of things that are changing, adapt to that fast pace, because we're nowhere close to doing that.
So when you say we work together on this, I love that. So I'm assuming you say government, i.e. Brussels, and the private sector. Yeah? Yes?
Always.
Good. No, I'm just trying to clarify. So that is great, because I wanted more together.
No, in the sense that without the private sector, we would not be able to, to really, like, first of all, one, find capital. Over back to you. Two...
Wait a second. We don't print money.
No, neither do I. But the fact that there are projects that we would not be able to do when we create or grow, let's say, public servants. I've always been a little bit, let's say, nervous about our societies being completely split between those who work in the public sector and those who work in the private sector, as though your type of education you need is different, the type of training you need is different, the way or the impossibility of you being able to move in and out is not at all existent in Europe when compared to other continents such as the US. And I think that requires a culture change, and you can help us also do that in telling us where we're being too slow. You do that already, so I think it's quite clear.
That's
why I'm here. I could not avoid it, you know.
I don't want to be rude, but we clearly don't do it enough, right?
No.
Okay, so let me get on to the next. So I want to just go a bit, deeper into this. How can we work together? And I think everybody agrees on this issue of lifelong learning. As I said, 81%, that includes a lot of young people. And I was reading about an initiative in France, which I thought was incredibly interesting, where individuals can build credit towards learning with their employers. And I think that is a very interesting avenue, because if many, and again, we, the private sector, know what we need. There's a huge shortage in Spain and across Europe of skills. So is there a way where we could work together to find, as I say, usually in Europe, we like more the stick than the carrot. Can we not focus more on carrots in this way, where we could get, for example, wage subsidies to encourage corporates to actually train their employees? And just 1 minute of publicity, we have launched a few years ago what is the Santander Open Academy. It's in partnership with many universities, public and private, for all ages. It's open, it's focused on AI, digital business. We get real-time feedback from individuals, so it's not what we, Santander, want to teach, but it's what people need for them to be more productive. So we get, we have thousands of these students that have these micro courses, which are very highly rated. So again, doing more of that together with governments might be a way to get this, public-private in what is essential, which is lifelong.
In a way, I think I read it somewhere that you've been doing this for like 28 years or something as long as that, in terms of multiple decades of you being able to, first of all, to reach out to universities that are producing the crop of new employees, right? You have career fairs, you have the possibility to look for what you think are the best to fit what you need. And what I've realized also, and I think we all have to sort of come to the realization, what do we mean by lifelong learning? You have people who are age 57, 58, who tell you we still have a lot of years left in us. Don't force us to go into pension, into early retirement. And that, as I'm running the institution together with my colleagues, when we're faced with that question, I ask myself, so is it because of us that that person can no longer find a place to stay in the institution? Or is it because there is a culture that you would not even start to upskill at that age? My father retired at age 62, immediately realized that he did not want to continue to stay at home, essentially. I think it was also important that he didn't. for my mother, but also that he immediately said, I could train to do something that could adapt to what I know. He's an accountant by profession, and therefore, how could I adapt? But he needed to be trained. Now, if we can find a public incentive to do that, if governments can allow for subsidies to be found that could help you improve, just like we do in so many other areas, we have statistics that show, for example, mental well-being. How important is that? Since the pandemic, if we had to quantify the impact that the pandemic had on people who were suddenly isolated, if we could turn that into an opportunity to retrain. We didn't do it. We didn't know what we were dealing with. But if we could use, and you know, in Europe, in Brussels, we like a lot of reports, we publish them, we say that this is an excellent statistic in them, etc., and then we forget them. I mean, I would like to have more references to the Draghi and Letta reports today as there were 9 months ago when these reports were published. Because as time goes by, you get this feeling, this was in the Draghi report. What have we done since then? We are now already 1 year into our legislature. We've had excellent steps put forward in terms of new legislation. We're waiting for a lot more. But I would not like to have a conversation where we say, education is not a competence of the European Union. Let's leave member states do whatever they want there. Why? Because we're so much more integrated. The examples that we saw in the video, you know, you had someone speaking Portuguese, someone speaking English, someone speaking Spanish, and these are the ones that would have trained or probably studied in different countries. At the end of the day, it's the same market. And me and you talk a lot about this, and mea culpa in a way when we talk about the Parliament and how much legislation and the over-legislation that we find ourselves with that creates only barriers to movement should also apply here, that we make it easier for you to move and learn, especially because jobs are going to change fundamentally in each area.
You're totally right. Removing the barriers, I mean, that was one of our goals with our Santander Open Academy. And this is one of the insights to me is that using an example from banking, you know, banks have done forever consumer finance, right? We finance people to buy a car, to buy a fridge. Suddenly, these new companies come up, Affirm, Klarna, they do the same. They finance people to buy things. But the how they do it is entirely different. And this, to me, is super important. The way people today want to be educated is much shorter, much more to the point, more practical. That's why the private sector, that's why they see companies. And again, the consumer finance has radically changed. We've actually built a product called Xenia, where we are integrating in Germany with Amazon and Apple. It's the same, but it's not the same. So we need to see this not as a banker, not as an educator, not as the parliament, but as students. And this is super important because the way people want to receive education is different. And again, I urge, not, he doesn't need it now, to your father, but maybe the Santander Open Academy, because this is what we're working on.
It could be his next job, okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Exactly, yes, please do, because it's AI, and I'm sure he still is not familiar, I mean, none of us are with AI, but the key thing is that it's the people that are studying that give us the insight as to what they need to get a job, not what I as a company or I as a commission. And this is something which I think, and that's a reason, and one of the things that really upsets me, and you know, at the end we're all competitive, you know, why 66% of all unicorns come from China and the US? By the way, a lot of these are educational related, only 7% from Europe. And it's because we need to put ourselves in the consumer, in the person who's looking to be educated, person who's looking to buy a consumer loan. It's totally different. So again, and so my answer, you were saying, of course, and I agree with you, you mentioned something which also has many implications. We do not want every country to do the same thing. We want a single market. I'm not going to repeat single market in services and banking and so on, because we keep on saying it and it never happens, so I will not discuss that. But in education, definitely interoperability. I was asking you, you know, I know there is an Europass. This is the micro-credentials. We should have full speed on that. Do you agree on that?
We have been talking for so long about seamless transition between educational institutions. We've come quite a long way.
Yes. Yeah.
We, not only with Europass, but also in equivalence of qualifications, etc. But my fear is that we're equipping our kids, our children who go to school, the students, with the tools that they need, right? Today, if you are going to study mechanical engineering, then you know that more or less you could find a job in Europe, in a company that will take you immediately. I was in Italy 2 weeks ago, and all I heard was this, like, if there is any mechanical engineer in Europe, we take him or her, which is good for me because my eldest kid is doing mathematics right now, so I can imagine too that he can at least have a path. However, if you graduate in AI, the higher level degrees, in other words, PhD, only 19% of them stay in Europe. Now, why is that? So we're saying at the same time that every job is changing. The digitalization is going to completely take over. But if you graduate in what is the most fastest moving, revolutionary way of how our life is going to be, we lose more than 3/4. And that is a problem. And now, of course, we could use this opportunity at the moment in order for us to perhaps, and this is a Parliament's position, that whatever can be used, even of the leftover research programmes that we have in the European Union before the negotiation of the next multi-annual financial framework, and by the way, I do not want to close forever the door on capital markets union and savings and investment union. We cannot do it.
How many years? I mean, you're not on the record here. There's no journalist.
No, zero.
Zero.
No, I think the biggest obstacles are gone. And I need to say this because we've been waiting for those obstacles to be removed, to be smoothened. We've seen complete changes of mindset of governments, of leaders of government who realise that they themselves, with their very conservative way of regulation, are removing themselves from the market. We can no longer afford to do so. I had the Indian foreign minister today in the morning, and you know, when we were discussing a free trade agreement with India, how do we go, what are the next steps, how easy can it be, and there's a lot of optimism of that, also because the UK did it pretty quickly, just a few days ago it was concluded. Where do we fit in? Are we still going to hide behind the fact that we have 27 non-interoperable systems in everything, including in the way we teach artificial intelligence and we adopt artificial intelligence models into our systems? Could be in the health sector, in your case, in the finance sector, in the technology sector. We have classic companies in Europe, long-standing ones, very established, whose original task or role has completely changed. Nokia, for example, is one example. That they are completely changing towards AI, defence technology, lens technology, etc., is something that we need to see and adapt from the public sector in terms of helping, in terms of making it easier for access to projects, incentivisation, that we notice and we realise that there is huge difference between one country and another. There is also huge differences in some countries between urban areas and rural areas. Access, not only, I mean, before, a few years ago we used to say, do you really need to move to a capital city to do well? And then COVID showed us that you could do everything remotely. We came back to physical presence, and we're back to the same question we asked ourselves in 2019. So all of this, I think, requires a complete shift in the way we think, but most importantly, agility and speed with which we think it.
Great. So I was going to ask you one last thing. If you could actually, have one policy or one investment or one thing that you would like to make happen in Europe now, what would that thing be in 30 seconds?
I would say, I would focus on artificial intelligence by saying, let's not be afraid. Because if we are afraid, we might lose not the competition, but the ability to potentially compete.
Thank you.
Many buts.
Fantastic.
Okay. 30 seconds.
Thank you so much.